Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 203. On tonight's program, we're going to talk about Bill Mersey, and we've talked about him several times on the program previously, but as you all know, I am certainly a stickler for context, and I certainly like to follow up on articles that we have read, if at all possible. So, Bill Mersey is somebody that did time with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was also Paul Manafort's cellmate for a while. Now, Bill Mersey was enrolled in a program that they have where people like him who are involved in blue-collar crimes, et cetera, are able to go and be almost mentors to new people who are coming into the prison, people such as Jeffrey Epstein. So Bill Mersey was acting in his role, in his capacity as one of these so-called prison friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and got to know Jeffrey Epstein pretty intimately. And according to Bill Mersey, he does not think that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered. He truly believes that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. So, I like to always hear both sides of the argument, right? Both sides of the conversation. It's very important that we have all the information that we can possibly gather. If we're going to make decisions and we're going to come to conclusions, we're going to need to have all of the information that's possible. So hearing from people like Bill Mersey, it adds more context, right? And I'll tell you what, you know how I feel, folks, here on the podcast. You know how I feel. I'll go wherever the evidence pushes me. If evidence comes out that says that Epstein killed himself and it's concrete evidence and it's tangible and we can see it and it's, legit, I'm more than willing to say the man killed himself, right? What I'm not willing to do is believe a narrative that's spoon-fed to me by the Department of Justice and by their buddies in the legacy media. Zero chance that's going to occur. I need tangible evidence. What, have we forgotten how easily we were dog-walked into Iraq? Have we forgotten all of the other BS lies that the government has told us, the federal government, when they're trying to push a narrative forward? I'm certainly never going to fall into that trap again if I can help it. So I'm going to need tangible evidence. And if that evidence can be provided, then I am more than willing to believe, obviously, that Jeffrey Epstein did, in fact, kill himself. But until we get to that point, I am of the mind that there are way too many coincidences that occurred in that jail cell, for this to be a simple case of suicide. So let's jump into the article from page 6 and see what they have to say about Bill Mersey and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. This article was authored by Cindy Adams. Bill Mersey was Paul Manafort's cellmate. Bill Mersey was also Jeffrey Epstein's cell buddy. So is Bill Mersey writing a book? You can bet your behind on it. And yeah, of course, a guy like this with the kind of knowledge that he has, intimate knowledge of people like Manafort, people like Jeffrey Epstein, of course he's going to parlay this into a book, and he should, right? People are interested. People want to know what's going on beneath the curtain. People always want to know what's going on in situations like we see with Epstein or even Paul Manafort. That would be fascinating reading, right? So I could see why Bill Mersey would want to write a book here, and I'll tell you what, I'll probably buy it. Mersey. When I was incarcerated in downtown Metropolitan Correctional Center, we had a room companion program for monitoring prisoners who needed special protection or who might be on suicide watch. Inmates, not professionals, got quick quasi-training plus 40 cents an hour to sit for a 4-hour watch, which included periodic check-ins. I was its boss, the inmate companion coordinator. So that was the program I was talking about in the opening there. Guys like Bill Mersey were chosen specifically to do these jobs because they weren't violent, they weren't a threat to society for the most part, etc., etc. So according to the Department of Corrections, they thought that this would be a low-risk way for them to save some money, not have to pay professionals, obviously, and pay these other inmates 40 cents an hour to sit and monitor high-risk inmates such as Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know how smart that is. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't care if somebody's in there for a blue-collar crime or whatever it might be. You never know the pressure that somebody's facing once they're in a prison like that, and you never know if they're being pressured into action. I mean, I'm not saying that, obviously not saying that Mersey had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein's death, But I mean, if somebody has that sort of unfettered access to an inmate and they're, bribed or they're with the wrong people, how easily could they have the access to go ahead and harm an inmate like that? So I don't think it's a good idea from the Department of Corrections point of view to do something like this. And I don't know if the positives outweigh the negatives with a program like that. On the surface, at least to me, it seems like a bad idea. Why was he chosen? The short version is he was a college-educated, nice Long Island Jewish boy. Same background, same schooling as Epstein. The rest of the answer is flunking arithmetic. He had been sentenced to a year and a day. So he was in there for a year and a day. That's what he was sentenced, that his time was 1 year and 1 day. And considering the short time, et cetera, I guess that's what motivates the prison system to go ahead with this program. Again, I don't know all of the details and the nuts and the bolts, and I'm sure if it was explained to me in its, entire conception, or if I went and researched it in its entire conception, maybe I'd have a different understanding and a different opinion of it. But on the surface, I just think it's a bad idea to ever have unfettered access granted to high priority inmates when we don't know the motivations of those other inmates that are granted that sort of access. It's kind of a bad idea. Daily routine was up at 6:15, breakfast, back to sleep, lunch, then 5 hours, then dinner. These room companion programs meant 6 4-hour shifts daily. So this guy was quite busy, huh? He was really raking in the bucks at 40 cents an hour, huh? The government sure is getting what they pay for. So leave it to the government to bid it out to the lowest contractor, right? They do it all the time. You even see it with stuff like our space program. Yeah, let's bid it out to the lowest bidder because that sounds like a fantastic idea. I mean, really? Come on. Such a terrible idea. Epstein wasn't depressed, nor was he a diva. One-on-one, we talked about everything. We hung out. He even asked if I needed money, even about flying a private plane once with Donald Trump to Florida. I was like a kid he went to school with. He didn't ask dumb questions about my life. And 7 p.m. to 11, I kept him entertained. Normal conversation. And we know Epstein loved to brag, right? So I think it's a good idea for investigators to talk with Bill Mersey and see whatever Epstein said. I think that they should get that from him and add it to their investigation. Anything about Trump, anything about Clinton, anything about any of these guys, right? You never know where that nugget is going to land. You never know where that very important piece of evidence is going to come from. So you just got to compile all of the evidence and then go back over it when you're doing your investigation portion and put it all together. And you never know what sort of nugget you're gonna stumble upon that helps fit the pieces together. He was future-oriented, like, how am I going to survive? He did not appear suicidal nor visibly depressed. He'd sit on the toilet sideways to see me. Then, lying on his back, he'd go to sleep. The incongruity was I'd see him drift off saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to be here for the rest of my effing life." But when the judge denied him bail, he did obsess a little on how to handle prison life. But not my job to stress him. So, of course, Jeffrey Epstein was a bit shook, right? He doesn't know what's going to happen in prison, and by all rights, he should have been shook. People like him, their shelf life is not very long in prison. So a guy like that, there's going to be trepidation on his part. He has some real deep, dark thoughts and fears that he's battling. And if he was ever put onto the main line, onto the main yard, it wouldn't matter, be it the Mexican gangs or the black gangs or the white gangs or just some independent vigilante type. Somebody would get to him and somebody would make him pay for what he did. And Epstein knew that. And he knew his money could only go so far, right? Eventually one of these people were going to shank him or stick him or do whatever it is they do to people in prison, and that would be the end of it. And Epstein knew that, and he stressed those fears to Mersey for sure. Truth is, he did try to do himself in once. When I saw he had marks on his neck, I asked what the F happened. He said, "I got up to get a drink of water," and he did not elaborate on the lie. Well, he also said that Tartaglione attacked him. Let's not forget that. It seems like that's part of the story that seems to get left out all of a sudden. But it shouldn't get left out. Tartaglione was accused of attacking Epstein, and the only investigation we had was, well, by the prison system. And do you really think we can trust them? Again, folks, I do not think that they have set a pattern that is one that we should trust without any sort of scrutiny, without asking questions, and without being skeptical, right? Would they trust us if we just came to them and said, all right, well, we're not guilty, that's it, you should just, get rid of the charges against us, drop charges? No, of course, they'd want to see evidence. Well, we want to see the evidence, Department of Justice. That then brought him into the Special Housing Unit. It's for troublesome boys or suicide cases or those afraid of the general population because there were really dysfunctional, bad inmates there. So did Mersey believe Epstein did himself in, or did any other source do him in? I didn't know those guards around him in that Special Housing Unit. They were end-of-the-line guys, rotated. They punched the time clock. They were collegiate and hung out with inmates. It wasn't a crackerjack organization. When a wave of staff was brought in afterwards to assess what happened, they said, "This is the worst-run prison we've ever seen in our lives." That says a lot, too, because there's a lot of shithole dumps in this country, prison-wise, right? A lot of really terribly managed prisons, a lot of prisons that are understaffed, underfunded, under everything. And we pack all of these people in there with no hope of reforming their lives, and we expect them to come out and be better people, when, in fact, we're just giving them more of an opportunity to become better criminals when we don't offer the proper resources. That unit is a detention a-hole. You just sit in a corner, locked down 23 hours a day. The warden hadn't seen fit to put somebody in there with him, so there was nobody to stop him. It's been said the others heard Jeffrey tearing sheets that night. So, do I believe Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide? My answer is yes. Discovery Channel's Henry Schleif, our 3-part program, Who Killed Jeffrey Epstein, begins Sunday, May 31st. Mersey. I haven't seen the footage, but I'm a principal character in it. Listen, I've done freelance writing before, so am I inclined to consider writing a book? Yes. Well, I don't blame him for that. He should write a book. And also, Mersey's just going on what he thinks as well, remember. He hasn't seen footage. The only person who's seen the footage, supposedly, is Attorney General Barr. And I have a problem believing what he's telling me. Sorry. All right? He hasn't established a track record of credibility in this case. Not one that I'm willing to stand behind and say, hey, this guy has been honorable here, and the Justice Department's doing the right thing. Because they haven't. Not in this case. Not now. Not ever. So I'm going to be skeptical until I see some action. Note to Leo DiCaprio. Call your agent. Should this become a movie, the Manhattan Correctional Center prisoners will not be filmed in Technicolor. Their authentic uniforms will be shot in living dark brown. Only in New York, kids. Only in New York. And that's kind of fitting to end the article that way as well, because I talk about New York all the time and how it's a shame that I find it to be such a cesspool. Considering I was born there and I'm from there, my family is from there, my roots are there, it's such a shame that New York, so-called high society, thinks so less of everybody else. And it's also a shame that those very people in so-called polite high society, those are the very people that are making the laws in New York City. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll dig back in.